want to keep that going for the foreseeable future. So I hope you're enjoying them and finding them useful. And if you have topics that you want me to discuss, please let me know. Happy to discuss them on here. Anything you really want to talk about related to health, wellness, performance, sports, athletics, training, nutrition, all the fun stuff that we love to talk about. So if you have something that you want me to discuss, please let me know. But for this week, I wanted to talk about something that I related to a post that I made, it was yesterday or day before, around testing your VO2 max. So my coach, Mike T. Nelson, if you don't know who he is, please go look him up. He's a super smart guy and shares a ton of great information. Had shared something around doing a VO2 max test on a Concept 2 rower. If you don't know what a Concept 2 rower is, it's just an indoor rower. And how you might go about doing that and why it might be important. And one of the things he had mentioned is that VO2 max is not only a great indicator or performance benchmark or metric if you're an athletic-minded individual, but also if you care about longevity and how long you're going to live. Your VO2 max score is actually very tightly correlated to how long you might live. And there's actually a number of other performance metrics that maybe the average person looking to live longer doesn't necessarily think about, but is quite important when it comes to, or quite indicative of how long you might live. So those are things like, besides VO2 max, also your grip strength. So, just how much strength you have when you grip something, and your lower body muscle mass. So why are all these three things, VO2 max, grip strength, and lower body muscle mass, correlating to how long you might live? Well, if we take a little bit deeper look at what these things do, right? So VO2 max is a measure of your aerobic capacity, right? It's measuring the maximum amount of oxygen you can consume, right? And this is important for performance reasons, because as you increase the intensity during some type of physical activity, you need oxygen to fuel, to power or transfer the fuel that your body's looking to utilize into the muscle to make it move. So the more oxygen you can get in and take in and assimilate, the more power and force and muscle contraction you're able to do. So that's why when the level of intensity increases in your exercise, you start breathing harder and harder and harder, because you're trying to take in more and more oxygen, right? So the more and more oxygen that you can take in, the better. And this is something you can actually train, right? It's not something that's static, it's something that can be trained. So when you're very much deconditioned, the amount of oxygen you can take in before absolutely collapsing, falling on the floor, is very small. But when you're a highly trained individual, that number is pretty high, actually. And grip strength, right, is just, like I said, the measure of how much force you can produce when closing your hand. And how is that important? Well, it's a great sign of just overall physical fitness, right? If your grip is strong, it means you're probably physically strong as well, right? Because when we do things like exercise and lift weights and resistance training, a lot of that involves holding onto a bar or some kind of dumbbell, a barbell, holding a pull-up bar, that type of stuff. And so in order to do those things, you need to have the muscles in your arm in order to grip them, right? So as your strength increases, your grip strength also increases, because you're lifting and pulling and moving more and more weight. And the last thing, your lower body muscle mass. Why is that correlated to longevity? Because typically the more muscle mass you have in your lower body, the less likely you are to, the more stable you're going to be, and the less likely you are going to be to fall. And we all know that, how bad it is for an older individual when they fall and then they do something like break their hip, right? And it's not necessarily the fact that they broke their hip that often causes them to pass away, but it's the fact that they break their hip. Oftentimes they end up in the hospital and surgery, and that leads them to contract some kind of other condition that then ends up killing them because they can't fight it off, or they're just weak and they never actually recover enough to become healthy again, right? So that's why lower body muscle mass is important, right? So all these things are just correlations to basically the same thing, right? If you have lower body muscle mass, if you have strong grip strength, you have VO2 max, a high VO2 max, you're more likely exercising, you're performing some type of physical activity, you're moving around, and that means you're overall just a healthy individual, right? And what do healthy individuals usually do? Well, they're also usually concerned about their diet, nutrition, they're concerned about their sleep, they're concerned about their stress management, they have healthy practices like getting out in the sun, which you can see is shining very brightly behind me. They have strong social connections, they do all of the usual things that a healthy individual would normally do. Now, it doesn't mean that if you have a very high VO2 max that you can't also have a very crappy diet and have something like type 2 diabetes. It's not, for sure guaranteed that you're going to be healthy if you have a high VO2 max, a strong grip strength, and a lot of lower body muscle mass. It's just more likely that you would be an overall healthy individual. So from an athlete's perspective, when we think about these performance benchmarks when it comes to our athletic performance, they're all well and good, but we have to remember that they're also very good markers of how long we're going to live. And if we continue to keep up our performance from a physical fitness point of view, that we will more than likely live a long, healthy life. So we don't necessarily need to think about, if I do this workout, I'm going to improve my VO2 max and that's going to make me run a faster mile or whatever, or if I do this squat, it's going to make my glutes look really good, or whatever. You can also think about, well, if I do these squats and I do this, terrible workout on the rower, that's going to improve my lower body muscle mass and improve my VO2 max. It's also going to maybe add a few years to my life, and I might live a longer, happier, healthier life, which is probably, at the end of the day, much more important than how we do in our sport of choice or competition of choice. So something to keep in mind for you athletes out there who are tracking these types of metrics and only thinking about their sports performance. Also think about your longevity and what you want to do after the sport isn't necessarily so important anymore. So that's the message for this week. I just wanted to throw that out there. These, if you're an athletic-minded individual and you're tracking these types of metrics, how they might be, you might reframe them to look at them in a different perspective as well. That said, I just wanted to say that I have a couple of openings for health coaching. So if you are interested in health coaching, please reach out to me. I have a couple spots open for clients. So now's the time if you're interested in working with me. So please reach out if you want more information about that. Also, I'm going to promote my newsletter. I'm trying to really put some quality content, weekly content into that and get it out to people on a weekly basis. So stuff in there that you might find useful. It might just be a short, rant on some specific topic. There will be links to various content on the interwebs that I found useful for the week. Possibly more information, special discounts for people who are looking for material for me or help for me, services and stuff like that. So I hope to make it a very useful, worthwhile weekly newsletter that you can actually take some actionable advice from and get something out of. So please, if you're interested in signing up for that, head to my website. There's a link at the top to sign up for the newsletter. Just enter your name and email address and you'll be automatically signed up and you'll get the emails automatically. You also get links to these weekly Facebook Lives. So if you're looking to find them easily, you'll get them into your inbox every week. And yeah, so if you're do anything, please go and sign up for my newsletter on my website. I'll put a link in the comments for you to do that. And with that said, I'll talk to everyone next week. I hope you have a good week, nice weekend, and get out there and do something fun. Maybe go and do your VO2 max test on the Concept 2 rower. And let me know what your VO2 max is, because that's super cool. I love hearing other people's adventures like that stuff. So talk to y'all next week. Have a good week.